The young girl kneels down and cries out to her father, asking what it will take for him to love her. Should she become like Jeanette? And if she does, will he call her name dearly as he does hers and watch her with warmth in his eyes? Will he hold her in his arms without pushing her away? But the father coldly replies that such a thing won't happen until the day he dies. The girl cries out how she is his daughter too and was by his side much longer than Jeanette. But the father calls her a fool with piercing contempt. His voice was digging into the girl's ears, crueler than ever, and the reality struck her as her father confessed that there was never a day when he considered her his daughter. Clyde was heartless until the very end. The deepest despair, like never before, flooded Ambrosine's eyes. This marked the end of Lovely Princess's Chapter 8, Twisted Faith. Our female protagonist wakes up suddenly in the body of an infant, just after thinking about that novel. It was a romance novel she read because a customer left it behind. The title and the plot were tacky and childish, too. She wonders if she recalled that book because the princess who gets executed has the same name as her. She wobbles around, trying to get the book out of her head. A maid nearby watches her struggle with the rattle and tells her not to be a nuisance. She picked it up from the ground and gave it back to Ambrosine without even wiping it. This makes Ambrosine wonder if she is belittling her for being an outcast of a princess. She continues fussing, to which the maid lays her down and goes away. Ambrosine still hasn't gotten used to her small figure. She went to sleep after taking some sleeping pills, and she woke up to all this. And to top it off, she is a princess. The maid soon comes back and gives her the rattle back, saying they don't have the budget to give her more toys. She also tells Ambrosine that she won't coddle her if she starts crying, as she's busy right now. Ambrosine notices how rude she is, but she guesses not every princess is treated as one. After being an orphan in her previous life, it was nice to be reborn as a princess. But why did she have to be a princess that everyone hates? Ambrosine's father in this world was a real psycho. She even gets goosebumps whenever she thinks of his cruelty. According to what she overheard from the maids talking, this ruby palace that she's currently living in was originally where the emperor's concubines lived. In short, the emperor's harem. Or so it was until the day Ambrosine was born, when the emperor killed everyone in the Ruby Palace. Her mother was a dancer who was invited to the royal banquet. She drew the emperor's attention and was deflowered by him. But then she was forgotten and died, leaving an infant behind, who was Ambrosine. Since then, the emperor has cast Ambrosine aside too, his baby girl. So, she was raised by the wind rocking her cradle, the maids of the Ruby Palace. To Ambrosine, the man seemed like a dirtbag, leaving a baby like her here where he committed such a cruel massacre. Since hearing that story, Ambrosine has been having nightmares every night. But what scares her even more is the emperor, whom she has never even met yet. Despite being born a princess, Ambrosine was unlucky. She worries about him going cuckoo again and killing her. The name Ambrosine got in this life was given to her by her birth mother, the undying Ambrosine. It was quite an extravagant name for an outcast like her. It's the same name as the ill-fated princess in that romance novel she read, Lovely Princess. Ambrosine, whose name means immortality, is supposed to mean her mother wanted her to live a long and prosperous life in the emperor's care. Unfortunately, Ambrosine from the novel faces a tragic death at the age of 18. And by her father, the emperor himself, no less. Moreover, the maids of Ruby Palace belittle her as an outcast, probably because the emperor never came to see her. Only Lily is worried about her. But Ambrosine wasn't resentful. Rather, her goal is to stay a forgotten princess, out of her father's sight, for as long as she can. She'd be set for life if she ran off with some ornaments from this room, so she hopes the emperor forgets about her. A maid exclaims how His Majesty doesn't even think of Ambrosine. But she's surrounded by such luxuries. Ambrosine agrees because, no matter how bad she gets it, it's still the life of a princess. She is going to grow big and strong, steal some gold, and run off. But first, she must try getting out of the crib. Soon, Ambrosine could crawl around the carpet with ease. She crawls around, looking for gold. Thinking the princess likes sparkly things, she agrees to bring her a new one. The palace itself was luxurious, but due to the dwindling budget, she never got much to herself. Ambrosine's day in the Ruby Palace was peaceful. She was nervous at first, but when she didn't hear from the emperor for months, she thought he really must have forgotten about her. Even those who were always on their toes seemed to be at ease now. But with time, Ambrosine begins to notice some trinkets disappearing from her room. One day, Lily reads to Ambrosine about sorcerers. The sorcerer of the tower has the strongest powers among all the sorcerers in existence. The idea of sorcerers in this fantasy world excites Ambrosine. Lily continues reading that the sorcerer of the tower was so powerful that he could easily bring an empire to ruins. For that reason, they freeze their own hearts because such powers could be used for trivial things if passion overcame reason and emotion overcame rationality. There are theories that the sorcerer from the tower destroyed the kingdom before their Obelian empire. Ambrosine sees a man's picture in the book and points to it. Lily reveals it's her father, and Ambrosine begins smacking the book to where that damned blonde bloke was. The current emperor of the Obelian Empire is the hero who brought an end to the tyrannical, devil-worshipping king before him. But Ambrosine only sees him as a scumbag. Her father, His Majesty Clyde de Alger Obelia. As soon as Ambrosine hears the name, she is dumbfounded. The emperor's name was the same as the emperor in that book. Plus, she has the same full name as the princess from that book. Ambrosine gets shivers down her spine. She tries recalling the novel's contents. Lovely Princess is a romance fantasy novel that was a big hit online. As the title suggests, there are lovely princesses in the book. Among the two princesses of the Obelian Empire, the protagonist is the second princess, Jeanette. The princess is a beautiful lady with an angelic heart, and she is beloved not only by her nation but by the whole continent. And among those who adored Jeanette was her father, Emperor Clyde. To his people, he is praised as a hero and a savior of the nation. But in truth, he is a heartless man who killed his elder brother, the proper heir, and sat himself upon the throne. Jeanette was the kind of person who could melt the heart of even a cold-blooded man like him. Clyde only learned of Jeanette's existence when she turned 14. Her mother was Clyde's fiancée. After enraging him and losing her place as the bride-to-be, she died while giving birth to Jeanette. Jeanette's aunt tried to protect her niece from Clyde by hiding her away in the care of the Alpheus family. After realizing her existence, Clyde is cold towards Jeanette at first. However, the princess eventually managed to melt the cold, icy fort that was Clyde. Supported by her father, the emperor, she was married to Prince Alpheus, the best man in the empire fit to be a husband, and lived happily ever after. To Ambrosine, the whole plotline was cheesy, and she wonders what happened to the first princess, Ambrosine. She was the firstborn and the same age as Jeanette. Ambrosine's existence was announced to Clyde the moment she was born. But he leaves the child in the palace for concubines, due to which Ambrosine grows up to be a fragile princess, always on edge. The first time she ever sees her father is on her 9th birthday. Led by the lights and the noise of the banquet, Ambrosine leaves the Ruby Palace late that night, where she meets Clyde in the garden of the Emperor's palace. But of course, Clyde turns away and leaves, uninterested. But to a girl like Ambrosine, who's never received any affection, this was quite a fateful encounter. She tries with all her might to be loved by her father, thus growing up into a beauty with both skill and grace. And on the day of Ambrosine's debutante, when she turned 14, her dream got shattered into pieces. Ambrosine, with her gloomy and foggy disposition, and Jeanette, bright and cheery as the sun. Perhaps it was inevitable that everyone loved Jeanette more than Ambrosine. Instead of being jealous of Jeanette, Ambrosine teaches her the ways of the palace. But she ends up losing the very thing she ever wanted. Jeanette, her father's love. On top of everything, the poor princess gets killed by her own father after being accused of putting poison in Jeanette's glass. She was framed by Jeanette's aunt, an elaborate scheme to make her niece the first heir to the throne. But it was unnecessary, considering Clyde didn't give Ambrosine a single thought about the seat in the first place. On the contrary, Ambrosine would have gladly drunk the poisoned glass herself to save Jeanette, and avoid her father being sad. It was all because Ambrosine was a poor, foolish princess. Ambrosine was killed by Clyde before she was found guilty. It was her 18th birthday, exactly 9 years after the day she met him for the first time in the garden. Eventually, the truth was revealed, but Clyde never felt an ounce of guilt or regret for killing his first daughter. Jeanette suffers from guilt until she is comforted in the arms of her fiancé and puts the ordeal behind her. Our protagonist just doesn't get why Ambrosine had to die such a meaningless death. It's not that she really liked Ambrosine, but she just can't stand by and watch. But now, it seems she has become that very Ambrosine. Annalise begins to wail in frustration. Lily hears the princess and runs to her to coddle her. Lily York is the only person in the novel who claims Ambrosine is innocent, and for that, she also gets killed at the hands of Clyde. Despite being aware of the Ruby Palace incident, she still volunteers to become Ambrosine's nanny. The reason was Ambrosine's mother. She always admired how Diana's spirit was as free as a bird. But Diana died right after giving birth. Lily doesn't get what's wrong with the princess and tries her best to console her. But Ambrosine now knows she needs to make haste and leave the palace as quickly as possible. Time flowed like water, and soon, Ambrosine turned 5 years old. After years of effort, she has turned the maids to her side, who now have come to adore her. She doesn't want them to be against her, and she has come to realize she wasn't imagining things when she noticed the fineries missing from her room. Everyone in the palace is of noble blood, but the people of Ruby Palace are not really from the noblest families. They only looked out for themselves at first, but as time went by, they eventually realized Clyde had no interest in Ambersine or the Ruby Palace. Ambersine was as helpful as a scarecrow in a field, as they pecked at the Ruby Palace's budget little by little. Ambersine was the only one there, so they had nothing to be scared of. They became so bold that they were stealing jewels and ornaments from the walls. All this concluded with Lily fighting with the head maid on Ambersine's behalf. But the fineries the maids returned when they left the palace never made their way back to Ambersine. On the bright side, she got to hide a lot of goodies without Lily getting suspicious. Ambersine goes out to pick flowers out in the garden. The Ruby Palace is known for its beautiful scenery, but it doesn't seem like a good place to raise a kid. As Ambersine wipes her chocolate-stained hands in the fountain, she sees her reflection and finds herself adorable. She is the spitting image of her mother, but those unique eyes are from her father. Jeweled eyes are only possessed by those of direct lineage to the imperial family. The people of this world all have some amount of magical power, but the imperial family has a very unique type of magic. Hence, eyes like this. Everyone says Ambersine is the only one with Clyde's eyes, but there's Jeanette too. While picking up flowers, Ambersine finds herself far away from the Ruby Palace. She instead finds another building, but nobody is around. She gets a brilliant idea and decides to use it if no one is here. She was wondering where she could hide the riches for her future escape. She now chooses this empty palace as her secret hiding place. Ambersine was wondering what happened to her previous body and whether she overdosed on the sleeping pills that resulted in her death. She was an orphan, so it's not like she left anything behind and hopes never to go back. Ignoring the part where she dies, Princess Ambersine's life is like heaven on earth. There's food, no need to earn money, and she owns real estate. And maybe it's because she was reborn, but learning the language wasn't difficult either. This world doesn't seem to teach reading and writing at an early age. So, when Ambersine wrote down some letters, she was praised as an intellectual, and thus came forth her early education. While Lily leaves her the next time to get some milk for her, Ambersine takes the opportunity to take out her riches from under the bed. She then struggles to bind them to her little legs. She had heard the whole palace would be cleaned soon, so she couldn't afford to lose her pretties. It's heavy, but she has no choice and has decided to go back and forth a few times like this. After Lily puts her to bed for a nap and leaves, Ambersine discreetly sneaks out without anyone noticing. She pants as she dashes towards her secret hideout. She knew hiding it inside the building would be troublesome, so she decided to hide it under a tree. However, she doesn't have anything to dig with, and if she gets caught with dirty hands, Lily will find out. She then decides to keep the stash hidden and come back tomorrow to bury it. She could ask Hannah for a toy shovel, too. Ambersine runs back at full speed and makes it too bad, puffing frantically before Lily can enter her room. Lily notices how she is sweating, to which Ambersine says the room is hot. Lily observes how summer has arrived and decides to put up the curtains tomorrow. After that, Ambersine ran out of the Ruby Palace a few more times, once every few days, so she didn't get caught. Though she is happy with how she's living right now and wants to stay like this forever, within these walls lives a ticking time bomb named Clyde. So, these pretty things were her backup for that dreaded day. This time, Ambersine decides to head towards the building and, as usual, doesn't see a single soul. She finds the palace adorned with gold pretties, unlike her marble palace. She decides to sneak one, unaware of someone approaching him. Ambersine flinches in surprise as a man coldly asks what a filthy bug is doing in his palace. Ambersine turns around to find a man standing there with his knight. She drops her stash in surprise, which reveals her pretties. The man's jeweled eyes and face make her realize he is none other than Clyde de Alger Obelia, and Ambersine's face turns pale. Seeing Ambersine reminds Clyde of the dancer from Ciudadana, and he remarks that she looks like that wench. Ambersine panics and wonders what Clyde is doing here, considering she must meet him when she's 9, not 5. Clyde lifts her chin, saying it doesn't matter where she came from. He says he remembers that wench named her Ambersine, making her heart pound louder than ever. Clyde continues, saying that back then, she was a tiny bug that couldn't even lift its head. In the Obelian Empire, a name related to immortality is only permitted to an official heir to the throne, and it can only be granted by the emperor himself. On the day of the Ruby Palace massacre, Clyde was planning to kill Ambersine, but the heir's name that Diana gave her daughter seemed amusing to him, and he wondered how long she could live in accordance with its name. Clyde crouches down to her level, remarking that she has grown a lot. Ambrosine trembles, wondering why he is paying attention to her. Just then, another sack of Ambrosine's pretties untied from her thigh and dropped to the floor. All eyes turned to it, and Ambrosine eyes widened as she saw her numbers 7 and 8 bags roll away. Clyde cracks a fallen ruby below his feet and picks up Ambrosine. He glares at her curiously and comments that she's heavy and has chubby cheeks. This makes Ambrosine pissed, and she curses at him internally. Clyde then asks what she is doing in his palace, shocking Ambrosine. She definitely did not know this was his palace, one that was even humbler than the Ruby Palace. She realizes that the reason 9-year-old Ambrosine entered the Emperor's palace was because it was this close. Clyde glances at the gold angel statue where Ambrosine previously bid on it. Clyde's knight, Felix, remarks that she might have thought it was a toy. Ambrosine wonders if she is going to die because of that. However, to her surprise, Clyde tosses her towards Felix, saying she must have wandered off during playtime and telling him to carry her. He then remarks that he should have tea with his guest. Ambrosine is confused as she sits with Clyde to have tea. Clyde mentions that it is boring because she is unable to speak. Fearing for her life, she smiles at him, saying she can talk. Clyde asks why she was quiet until now, to which Felix whispers to him how little girls of the princess age are known to be very shy. Clyde makes Felix leave and turns to stare at Ambrosine. He mutters how Ambrosine's mother must have been ripped to shreds if she were alive for giving such a name to her daughter. It was because it was something that even Clyde, the emperor, couldn't receive. Obelian emperors are granted names that mean eternity or immortality. The manes are given to the official first heir to the throne. Therefore, Clyde, who is not the empress' son, could take the throne by force by killing his brother, but he would never be granted the name of an emperor. So there is a good chance Clyde may feel frustrated by her name and kill her. But Ambrosine has zero interest in the throne. Clyde asks her to eat, saying that if she doesn't, he will have no choice but to punish the cook. Ambrosine trembles and begins eating despite feeling nauseous. She forcefully smiles, saying it's yummy. She just wants to go back, scared of the devil before her. Clyde asks who taught her manners, and she reveals Lily. She becomes startled as Clyde reveals he knows Lily York. 5 years ago, she stepped in front of him, requesting that she be allowed to take care of her. And so, the only 2 people who survived after getting in his way were Ambrosine's mother and that wench. But Ambrosine doesn't respond and quietly eats. Clyde then asks if she knows who he is, making Ambrosine tremble in fear. And she knows it's best not to take her eyes off him. She thought it was odd of him to bring her here. It was probably on a whim, an opportunity given as a prize for drawing his attention. This is a test to decide whether to let her live longer or to have her killed. Maybe 9-year-old Ambrosine was tested by Clyde as well and is just not depicted in the book. She wonders what to do for a while and then questioningly blurts out "Father." Let it be known that she has dug her own grave. But to her surprise, her response wasn't an epic fail like she had thought. She thinks of Jeanette being loved by the man and decides to draw his attention. She then calls him Papa. Clyde remains silent at first. Ambrosine smiles at him, calling him Papa again. Ambrosine managed to survive. But the Ruby Palace was thrown into chaos since she wasn't in bed like she should have been. Imagine their surprise when Ambrosine returned in the arms of the Emperor's royal guard. And the Ruby Palace's maids glared at Felix as if he were a kidnapper. Ambrosine doesn't help him since he left her alone with Clyde. But her eyes widen as Felix reveals that His Majesty will come to visit Princess Ambrosine soon. Even the maids of the palace were shocked yet happy. As soon as Felix leaves, she empties out her stomach from all the piled-up anxiety. Her plan of not getting noticed by Clyde and living inside the Ruby Palace until she dies has now officially failed. She was too naive and thought everything would be fine as long as she was careful. Ruby Palace is supposed to house concubines, not the Empress, which makes it odd that it is so close to the Emperor's place. Ambrosine's plan to save enough money to escape the palace before turning 18 was, however, still in the realm of possibility. And Plan C was to continue playing cute to steal Clyde's heart. But that seemed impossible. Ambrosine already knows what happens, according to the book. Maybe being Daddy's little girl is pushing it, but she might be able to get close enough to him so that Clyde won't want to murder her. Plus, he did let her go after hearing her blurt out "Papa." She kicks the sheets in bed as embarrassment from the cheesiness looms over her. Eventually, Ambrosine decided to carry out both Plan B and Plan C. The shame and embarrassment she will suffer from will be an investment in her future. The next time Ambrosine goes to the Emperor's palace is with Lily. As they greet Clyde, he remarks that he hasn't been able to pay enough attention to his one and only daughter due to his duties at the court. But he gives credit to Lily for helping Ambrosine grow into a healthy child. Ambrosine mentally tells him to stop lying, as he has been neglecting her. but she is surprised, as Clyde says he will now be looking into the princess' well-being. And starting today, Princess Ambrosine will be treated as a proper princess. But Ambrosine knew that in the novel, Clyde never admits that he never saw Ambrosine as his daughter. Lily consoles Ambrosine, saying that everything will be fine. A few days passed, but Clyde and Ambrosine stayed the same. But Clyde mentions that she got even more chubbier. Ambrosine smiles at him, saying he got pretty too. Clyde remains silent while Felix and Lily wait for the worst. So far, Ambrosine has met up with Clyde 2 more times and had some sweet and scary father-daughter time. During these meetings, Ambrosine realizes that no matter how pert and insolent she behaved, Clyde didn't try to kill her. On the contrary, the more she behaved like a scared child, the more formal and boring her answers were. But she still feels scared to face him. This time too, she survives, making her realize Clyde likes those who are aggressively friendly. Clyde has her join him at the lake. Lily expresses her concern for the princess being around water, but Clyde says there's nothing to worry about when she's with him. Though Ambrosine also didn't want to ride that boat, she had no choice but to follow Clyde. And so, as Clyde gets her on the boat, Ambrosine holds her breath in nervousness. Ambrosine wonders what to say to him and ends up complimenting his hair for being sparkly and pretty, remarking that she likes sparkly things. Her own comment makes Ambrosine wonder if she is obsessed with golden things because she was poor in her previous life. Clyde smiles, saying this reminds him of the jewel pouch she had with her that day. He assures her that he kept her treasures safe and sound, asking her to come and retrieve them herself next time. Ambrosine remains quiet, and so does Clyde. Ambrosine stares at what Clyde is wearing and wonders if it was from the Egyptian or Greek era. Whatever it is, he looks good in it and seems to be the type of man who easily attracts women. She can see now why they would get drawn to him. Diana really liked Clyde as well. Ambrosine remembers reading that from a spin-off of Lovely Princess. Suddenly, Ambrosine spots a blue lotus-type flower in the lake and tries reaching out for it. However, she loses her balance and falls into the lake. She struggles to stay afloat or swim, and she asks for help. However, she halts as she sees Clyde stare at her. This makes her realize he won't save her, no matter what. He's going to watch her drown like this quietly. Even so, she wonders if he isn't being too much of a jerk. She is soon brought out by him. Clyde then asks Felix to teach Ambrosine how to swim, as it would be a shame if an emperor's daughter drowned to death in a mere lake. On the other hand, Ambrosine fell ill and mentally cursed her psychopath father. How could he have such a look on his face when a 5-year-old kid has fallen into the water? She decides to execute Plan B as soon as possible, as it now seems impossible to win the heart of someone that horrible. As Ambrosine craves chocolate and goes to the kitchen, she is suddenly approached by Lily, who informs her that her presence is requested. Reaching the palace's entrance, several maids greet her. Even Felix kneels in respect, introducing himself as her temporary royal guard from today. He reveals how His Majesty intends to cherish the princess and treat her well. It turns out that Clyde switched out the old maids who are already working in a different palace, which makes Ambrosine upset. These new maids will be indifferent to her charms, and all her hard work has been tossed away. She, however, turns more upset as Felix happily reveals His Majesty's desire to spend time with her at dinner. But for Ambrosine, it's much easier to die and be reborn again. According to Felix, the lotuses at the center of the lake are magical, monstrous creatures that lure people into the water to steal their energy. As Felix brings Ambrosine to the dining hall, Ambrosine asks the mister why there aren't ladies or knights in Papa's palace. Felix responds that there is no one in waiting because he prefers to do everything himself. And the reason there are no knights on guard is because there is no need. He then tells her to call him casually. As Clyde doesn't respond to Felix after he calls out to him, he thinks His Majesty must be in bed. Though Ambrosine was annoyed, she was glad to go back. But Felix suggests she go in, as His Majesty will be pleased to be woken up by her. He leads her in and then waits for her outside, unaware of how scared of death Ambrosine is. Ambrosine looks around and finds the room to be unusually plain. But there was one thing that caught her eye, a gold painting. Moreover, all the paintings on the walls were gold. She also paints a portrait of a woman, and Ambrosine recognizes her. She then turns her attention to the sleeping figure of Clyde. He really did look like a prince from a fairy tale while sleeping. As he doesn't wake up, Ambrosine wonders if she should give him a little wake-up punch. However, a chocolate piece slips from her hand and falls on Clyde's face, waking him up. Ambrosine tries her best to make Clyde fall asleep. She instinctively begins to sing a lullaby to him that Lily does to her, "Sleep tight. The moon smiles down on you. Goodbye to the day. The baby smiles at the stars, too. Tomorrow will bring a brighter morrow. So, dream a pretty dream and sleep tight, my child." Clyde asks what song it was, and she replies that it's a song to say bye-bye to bad dreams. She then beams at him, wishing him a good morning. He says it isn't morning, to which she says good evening. He asks if Felix sent her in and gets up, sighing. He then decides to let them know to prepare their dinner here while Ambrosine averts her eyes. At dinner, Ambrosine struggles to eat with cutlery, so Clyde decides to send someone to the palace to teach her more etiquette. Plus, he explains that those she's learning from have no class, so it's time she receives proper lessons. She feigns a smile, promising to do her best. For the rest of the dinner, Clyde continues staring at her, making her nervous. At night, Ambrosine wishes to hear a lullaby from Lily. Lily sings to her, "When the night sneaks in, pick some flowers for my sake." The pretty stars smile, saying goodbye to the day. "Tomorrow will bring a brighter morrow. So, dream a pretty dream. Bye for now and sleep tight, my child." It was as Ambrosine expected. She doesn't compare to Lily's singing skills. On the other hand, Clyde ponders how Ambrosine is brazen like her mother. Felix remarks that Lady Diana was definitely the type to leave a lasting impression on anyone. Clyde says it would have been a year longer, and he would have forgotten the wench's face. Felix doesn't respond and rather shifts the topic, asking if Princess Ambrosine isn't truly lovely. But Clyde remarks that he lost such emotions a long time ago and asks Felix to leave him. Felix leaves and ponders. Though His Majesty may say such things, he is certain there's still some left. And someday, he, too, will bathe in that bright light. A month passed by. Clyde changed his tea time with Ambrosine to the early morning. It was 10 a.m., and Ambrosine adorably greeted Clyde, who didn't respond. But Ambrosine has an unbreakable will. She continues playing cute while Clyde remains unresponsive. Ambrosine notices how he looks tired and is always sleeping. She notices the drink in his hand and fusses that he wants what Papa's having, despite Felix explaining it might be too strong for her. But Clyde agrees to give it to her. Ambrosine thinks it smells nice, and she likes the drink, exclaiming that it feels like flowers are blooming inside her mouth. With this one comment, both Clyde and Felix's eyes widened, and they stared at her. Felix sighs, saying it's called lip tea. His Majesty enjoyed it as well, and Lady Diana also enjoyed it, having said exactly what Ambrosine just said. He continues that Lady Diana was the reason why His Majesty started to enjoy lip tea, whose main ingredient is sanu, which only comes from Siadama. But he gets interrupted as Clyde asserts he has no such memories and glares at Felix, remarking that he is surprisingly chatty today. He then tells Felix to leave them and tells Ambrosine to drink milk, as she's too young for tea. The scene shifts to Ambrosine drawing Felix, Lily, and then herself and the Emperor. She then begins to draw her mother after asking Lily what she looks like. Lily hides her sadness and responds that she looks exactly like Ambrosine does. In The Lovely Princess, she was described as a beauty one couldn't take their eyes off of. Ambrosine wonders just how pretty she was, even Clyde fell for her. She abruptly says that she wants to see her mother, after which a heavy silence ensues. This makes her realize she just said it out loud. Since that day, both Lily and Felix have been worried about Ambrosine all the time. This made her uncomfortable, and she wished they wouldn't be like that. She overheard Felix say to Lily that there are no memorial stones with recordings of Lady Diana in the palace. A memorial stone is a stone that holds up to 30 seconds of recording. Ambrosine has been sensing this for a while now, but Felix is oddly kind towards Diana. Even Claude's reaction back then didn't feel right. She then overhears Felix saying that he will ask His Majesty to use his ability to pass on his memory directly to his daughter. But she knew it was too much of a risk to ask Clyde. She interjects at the moment, telling them not to talk about her mom with Papa, as he hates talking about her. And what if she says she wants to talk to Mommy and Papa hates her too? And with that, things got worse, and their worry grew even more. Felix assures and swears in his name that His Majesty does not hate her or Lady Diana. But Ambrosine didn't want them to talk to Clyde, so she ran away. The next morning, she woke up tired after not sleeping the entire night. Things turn pretty awkward between the three. Ambrosine breaks the ice by asking Felix for a piggyback ride to the audience chamber. Seeing him interact with Lily made her wonder if the two had feelings for each other. As always, Clyde had awful manners, and Ambrosine had to wait for him outside. Suddenly, a charismatic man comes up to them and greets Felix. Felix addresses him as Roger, making Ambrosine realize the man is none other than Roger Alpheus from the Duke family who raised Jeanette until she was 14. And was also the father of the love interest of Aegil Alpheus. Roger Alpheus was quite an ambitious man, and he lived a very successful life with Jeanette. He greets Ambrosine after taking note of her, who calls her Mr. White, remarking that he looks like a white dog. She offers him candy too, But when he reaches for it, she pulls her hand away while Felix holds back his laughter. They then leave to meet Clyde, and Ambrosine waves Roger goodbye. They greet Clyde, and when Felix reveals how they met Sir Roger outside, Ambrosine says that he looks like a white dog. This makes Clyde smile, but he hides it. Ambrosine runs to Clyde and is mesmerized to see the gold throne he sits on. Felix suggests that Sir Roger's son be Ambrosine's friend since they are of the same age. But Clyde says he hates noise, and it's unpleasant to even think about two kids running around the palace. It was too bad since Ambrosine was curious about Eichkiel. He was 2 or 3 years older than Jeanette. She gets cut off from her thoughts as Clyde picks her up in an odd position and comments on how heavy she is. He then places her on his bed in the area behind the throne room, saying he is tired now. Clyde lies down and asks Ambrosine to sing the lullaby from last time. She tells him she forgot the song, to which he asks what would make her remember it. He then reveals how, after he claimed the throne, some insolent men tried to attack him in this very audience chamber. He caught them and had them on their knees. Those fools kept saying there was no one behind them and that they didn't know anything. So, he made them remember it by force. He expresses how, from his years of experience, he knows a few hundred ways to bring back lost memories, but he can't use them on her. Just now, she acted like she knew the song, but now she is telling him she forgot it. Shivering, Ambrosine interjects, saying she remembers the song now. Just like that, she had to sing the lullaby song on and on until Clyde was satisfied and fell asleep. Felix praises her singing skills, saying it is hard for His Majesty to fall asleep. He then apologizes to her for yesterday. She also apologizes. Felix confesses that he also lost his mother at an early age, who was also His Majesty's nanny. So, His Majesty and he are bosom brothers. He confesses how he resented his mother when he was young since she spent more time with His Majesty than him. So after she passed away, he used to say he didn't miss her at all, and he really didn't think he did. He also didn't feel her absence very much because she didn't spend that much time with him when she was alive. But one day, by chance, he was staring at a handkerchief and noticed the embroidery of his name done by his mother on it. Unbelievably, he started to get tears in his eyes. This made him realize that, though he had no memories of her, she was still his one and only mother. Ambrosine ponders and wonders if she can really relate to this personal story as an orphan. But if she were really Ambrosine, not even knowing her mother's face, she would be treated at Ruby Palace, finally meeting the father she'd always dreamt of. If she were her, she would want to see her mother. But she assures Felix that despite that, she can sing Papa a lullaby, so she doesn't cry. Felix asks if she has a wish. Mentally, Ambrosine thinks of how her wish is for Clyde not to kill her on her 18th birthday. She tells Felix she wants Papa to like her lots and lots, making him chuckle. Soon Ambrosine feels drowsy and falls asleep, while Felix wishes her wish to come true. Ambrosine dreams of a pretty-looking woman and wishes for her not to go. Clyde watches her sleep and talks in her sleep. He tells her to stop bothering her and go to sleep. 2 years passed, and Ambrosine worried about how her chocolate basket was empty again. It's like someone steals it discreetly. Plus, her charms don't work on Lily anymore after she gets a cavity. Now, her last resort is to go see her father. Though Claude still has his insolent ways of talking, he just lets her be. As expected, Clyde has many desserts brought in for Ambrosine. He then asks if she saw someone on his way and just ignores them. She understands he is talking about Roger Alpheus. She did meet him when coming up with Felix. He tried using her and kept suggesting she either be his son or his cousin's sick daughter as his friend. But Ambrosine refused, on the pretext that she wouldn't be friends with someone dumber than her. One day, Ambrosine finds a raven in the bushes. She chases after it and manages to catch it. In the process, she steps on someone's hair. It was a boy with long black hair and red eyes. Felix comes to find Ambrosine but doesn't see her despite directly looking at where she stands. Ambrosine realizes it is the boy who seems to be a magician. The boy's eyes lit up as he saw something in Ambrosine, saying he had never seen the likes of her before. He reveals how the raven is a sacred beast born from her magical power. A holy beast is the essence of one's magical power, or mana. When it gets fully grown, it absorbs itself back into one so they may use its mana as they please. It is born when its owner has an overwhelming amount of mana, so they usually never try leaving their owner. Excited, Ambrosine asks if it means she's some kind of sorcerer. The boy reveals that she does seem to have some potential and thanks him for letting her know. But she stops as the boy takes away the raven, saying he found it and should keep it now. He plans on cooking it up, to which Ambrosine protests that he gives it back to her. He explains how he slept way longer than he thought, and his mana's weak. If he eats it, his mana will be replenished too. She continues protesting, to which he decides to postpone it till the raven is fully grown. He explains how he could have gotten rid of her right now, but he finds her likable and is sparing her. He then assures her he isn't a bad wizard and introduces himself as Lucas. He then snaps his finger, telling her to call him by his name the next time they meet. He then vanished into thin air, leaving Ambrosine perplexed. Ambrosine ended up keeping Raven. Seeing Raven ravenously eat her chocolate cake made her realize it was the real chocolate thief. She then meets with Clyde in the throne room. Felix suggests they both go for a walk, and Clyde agrees. Ambrosine subconsciously tugs at Clyde's clothes, thinking it's Felix. Felix explains to Clyde that it means she wants him to pick her up because she doesn't mean that much to him when her legs hurt from walking. Ambrosine tries justifying herself but halts as Clyde picks her up weirdly. As she struggles to break free from his grasp, he tells her to hold still. Felix explains that this way of carrying will cause the princess discomfort. He demonstrates how he should carry the princess. But before Felix can give her back to Clyde, Ambrosine holds Felix tight, saying she wants him to carry her. Felix smiles and obliges. However, Clyde says he will carry Ambrosine, as carrying seems easy enough. He asks if she doesn't want to be carried by him, to which she smiles and reaches for him. Clyde picks her up and tells Felix to move since he is in the way. Ambrosine remains absolutely still in his arms. Clyde asks if Felix always carries her like this, and she says yes. She says she can get down and hold his hand. To this, Clyde asks if she's saying that she wants to get down because Felix carries her better than him. He advises her not to let Felix carry her too much, except for when he summons her, or she will create a bad habit. On the other hand, Felix is made to walk far away from them. Felix suggests he carry the princess if His Majesty's tired. Before Clyde can respond, Ambrosine slaps his face after seeing an annoying bug. She realizes what she did, and Clyde asks what she thinks she's doing. She tries explaining about the bug and blows on his face apologetically. As Clyde moodily scolds Felix for doing nothing as a guard except carrying his daughter around, he suddenly stops as Ambrosine coughs up blood out of the blue. Ambrosine feels dizzy and collapses to the ground. Ambrosine regains consciousness teary-eyed, and her whole body aches with excruciating pain. She cries out in pain as it feels like her insides are on fire. Even the Imperial doctors were unable to heal her, saying they couldn't do anything when her mana was leaping to and fro inside her body. Clyde locks the magicians for their incompetence one by one. He watches his daughter cry out to him for help. He closes her eyes, telling her to go to sleep since she's too noisy. Ambrosine thinks of him as heartless, but soon she loses consciousness. In her dream, she sees the pretty lady again. But she was sad. Whenever the pretty lady appears in her dreams, she doesn't talk, and the dream ends when she turns around and leaves the room as if she doesn't know her. But this time around, Ambrosine sees the lady being approached by a man. The man confesses that he has lost, and it feels as if he has been played by her all along. He promises to beg if she wants her to because if he doesn't, he will lose her completely. He tells her not to leave and to choose him instead of the child who's eating away at her life as they speak. Ambrosine abruptly wakes up to find the wizard boy from before by her side. Lucas remarks that she finally woke up and must have thought she was a kind of sleeping beauty. Ambrosine closes her eyes, making Lucas annoyed even more. She sits up and is surprised to learn that her body doesn't hurt anymore. Lucas reveals how she owes him her life, as her heart would have exploded and killed her if it wasn't for him. She asks how he knew she was sick and if he came to kill Raven. He reveals he would have already done so if he had wanted to. Plus, he stopped her dad from killing Raven. Just then, Claude and Felix enter the room. Ambrosine rushes to her father but manages to trip herself. But before she can fall, Clyde catches her. Rather than flinging her away, he lifts her up and asks if she is still feeling sick. Clyde asks if there will be side effects, but suddenly the boy starts coughing violently. He remarks that he must have used up all of his power to heal the princess. Clyde assures him he will be rewarded after the princess is recovered. Lucas then reveals that the princess is still not completely healed. He apologizes and reveals that he is still a boy in training and wasn't able to stabilize the princess's mana completely. But the worst has passed, so her mana will slowly be returning to its place now. He continues coughing and promises to sacrifice his body to save the princess. Felix suggests the warlock rest before being questioned further, and Clyde agrees. Ambrosine notices how he has turned smaller. Lucas leaves the room, but not before passing her a grin. Lily also enters the room and rushes to her side, saying that for the past month, she thought she'd never see her again. It is then that Ambrosine is told that she has been asleep exactly for 48 days. The scene shifts to Lucas telling Ambrosine how her dad isn't the son of Etarnithas after all. Ambrosine calls out him for being stupid and says Etarnithus has been dead for over 200 years already. Everyone in the palace was looking at the moron as her savior now. She had apparently collapsed because the mana contained in her body was running out of control. But there wasn't a single magician in the country who could heal her or even tell what was wrong with her. It was not until a young, gifted magician appeared. Lucas then reveals how his father really does seem to care about her. He tried to slay Raven the moment he heard that it was the reason she was dying. And it would have actually been more if he had, since all the mana the holy beast was holding would have flowed back into her. Ambrosine then asks if this is the reason Raven has been avoiding her, to which he reveals the holy beasts aren't that smart and tend to follow their owner's tendencies, like how they both go crazy over chocolate. He then randomly asks if she actually wants to run away from here. She wants to hide where no one can find her. Plus, she also hates him. Lucas returns the raven to her, announcing that her dad is coming. Ambrosine runs to Clyde, but before she can speak, Lucas apologizes to her. He explains how her pet is a tricky magical creature, and she must decrease the time she spends with it if she wishes for the incident from before not to happen again. Ambrosine glares at him and gestures for him to get Raven out before her father really tries to kill it. Clyde leads her to her bed, and she falls asleep. Later that night, she wakes up to see Clyde by her side. He tells her to get some more rest, and that he will stay until she is asleep. She obliges. The next morning, Clyde tells Felix to keep up his guard and continue investigating the magician in case he turns out suspicious. Clyde remarks that he thought he wouldn't care if she died or disappeared at some point. He then tells Felix to get out before he can lecture him. Clyde was always waiting for the chance while bearing hatred in his heart and the urge to kill her. He always waited to kill her today, the day after that, and so on. He cursed at her mother, who left behind something that was the spitting image of her. He was almost done forgetting her and almost raised her, the source of her demise. He can never truly be rid of his hatred until the day he dies. Every time he sees Ambrosine, he burns with a thirst to kill. But still, he wants to keep her in his sight a little while longer every time. He continued calling out to her how much he hated her until no words were left for him to utter. As the days passed, Ambrosine grew more confused about Clyde's behavior lately. She did come back from the brink of death, but he had changed a lot. He even moved her residence to the Emerald Palace. The Emerald Palace has been the home of princesses for generations and is also the place Clyde gave to Jeanette in Lovely Princess. Felix continued nagging Clyde for letting Ambrosine have a playmate, but she states she doesn't want to play with Mr. White's kid. Felix reveals that he is planning on enrolling in a school in Arlanta and will leave. Instead, Felix arranged the young warlock as an adequate playmate for her, despite her protests. As Lucas ignores her, Ambrosine pouts and says she should have been better off playing with Mr. White's kid. It is then that Lucas flicks his fingers, telling her to do just that. Suddenly, Ambrosine finds herself in the air and falling down. She falls for a boy, and by his appearance, he seems Ijekil. Ijekil remarks that she's an angel. But before he can ask how she fell, Roger begins looking for his son. Ambrosine quickly hides herself as Ijekil converses with his father, revealing he had been looking for Jeanette, who must have gotten upset since he left and ran away. After Roger goes away, Ijekil turns to Ambrosine and apologizes for not catching her properly. He asks if she is hurt, to which she says angels don't get hurt by things like this and tells him to keep his distance, not wanting to show him her eyes. Ijekil agrees and sits near her, asking how she ended up here. She says it's a secret, making Ijekil chuckle. As Ambrosine asks him about the girl Jeanette he was just looking for and they converse, Ambrosine is abruptly transferred back to her room. She sees Lucas and punches him without hesitation. Dumbfounded, Lucas remarks that she is the first person to hit her. He turns quiet as Ambrosine makes him promise not to do something like that again. She turns to do her homework, telling him to get back to his history books and not disturb her. Lucas says they are no fun since they are full of lies, especially about the magician of the tower. And if he nitpicked everything, there'd be no end. He explains how they ridiculously wrote that the magician of the tower tore down the old kingdom of Obelia's corruption and purified everything. He just smacked them once because they were being stupid. Also, the part about how the magician fell for Etarnithus, became his henchman, and then hid in despair after his death. Plus, about how the magician of the tower hid himself after becoming hideous by accident. All were blatant lies and made-up stories. He proudly reveals how the magician of the tower has always been, consistently, the best-looking person of all. This makes Ambrosine wonder why he's getting so worked up as well as about the beauty mark under his eye. One day, Ambrosine asks Lucas to bring her to Alpheus Palace once again and also change her eyes. Lucas changes her eye color to red and sends her in a rather undignified way, much to her annoyance. Ijekil sees her and helps her up. He pats down her dress to remove the fireplace ashes and welcomes her, expressing how worried he was when she suddenly disappeared before. Since Ambrosine didn't get the chance to say goodbye, she came back again. Ijkil then asks if the reason she came here was to meet him. When she replies in the affirmative, he turns embarrassed and shy. She tests his knowledge on different subjects, and to her shock, he knows a lot, even on subjects above the elementary level. He truly was the male lead. They get interrupted as Jeanette appears at the door, asking her big brother to go to the greenhouse with him. Ambrosine motions for Ijkil to go, which he does, telling her to wait for him. As Ambrosine watches them go, suddenly, Lucas suddenly appears behind her, asking if the girl is a chimera. This takes Ambrosine aback, who asks what he is doing here. He responds that he came to see who she wanted to be friends with so badly and asked if that girl was a chimera. He then suggests they go after them. As Lucas observes Jeanette, he finds her odd. Her mana waves are not that of a pure imperial bloodline. No matter how he looks at them, something is mixed in. He asks Ambrosine if she knows the girl since she has her eyes, but she doesn't look surprised. Lucas cringes as he watches the melodramatic farewell of the siblings as Jeanette cries to Ijkil, telling him not to leave. He then transports Ambrosine back to the Imperial Palace. Lucas asks why the girl seems like a chimera when she isn't. Jeanette is the protagonist of Lovely Princess. She is actually a child created by her mother, Penelope Judith. To be specific, she did actually give birth to Jeanette, but the process was artificial. Penelope was originally Clyde's fiancée, but she was never satisfied with him, who wasn't first in line to the throne. She seduced Emilius, who was the official crown prince. He had always regarded the talented and gifted Clyde as an annoyance, and therefore he welcomed Penelope. Clyde had an unhappy childhood. The name Clyde itself means the one who limps, so it speaks for itself. It was when he saw his fiancée cheat on him with his brother that he finally gave up on his blood ties once and for all. Later, Emilius became the emperor, killed Clyde's mother, and even tried to kill him by using black magic. However, Clyde managed to kill him. Before his death, Emilius did an experiment using Penelope, and she conceived a child containing blood magic. Emilius was always wary of how Clyde had stronger mana than himself and therefore wanted to create a powerful child who could surpass Clyde. As for Penelope, she died in childbirth, and an ordinary child was born, except for her jeweled eyes. And this is the story of Jeanette's birth. Hence, Jeanette wasn't even Clyde's real daughter like Ambrosine was. But no one but her parents knew the story of her birth. After that, Clyde became distrustful and lived a depraved life. But then he met Diana, and Ambrosine was born. Ambrosine thought Clyde loved Penelope more than his own life. In the original book, he accepted Jeanette even knowing that she wasn't his own daughter, and he still kept Penelope's portrait. But in her dream, things seem different. She flails about trying to get rid of her problems. Lucas asks why she is throwing a tantrum, to which she tells him that he is treating her like a kid. Lucas agrees, saying she isn't a kid, making her freeze in shock. He says she's just older on the inside and precocious, like Mr. White's boy. But the meaningful look he gives her makes Ambrosine find him suspicious. Later, Ambrosine meets with Clyde and runs into his arms. She tries hard to charm him like usual, and Clyde asks if she's okay with having the warlock as her playmate or if he can find her another child. She says he is good enough since he sent him. Clyde pats her in agreement and begins to walk. Ambrosine smiles fondly and hugs him tighter. A few days later, Ambrosine heard that Ijkil had left for Arlanta. He had told her to wait for him, but what angered her was how a 10-year-old kid was more well-read than her. This motivates her to study even harder. Several years pass by. The scene shifts to Sir Roger announcing and introducing Jeanette as Clyde's daughter to him in public at Ambrosine's debutante. The nobles gossip about how the pale-looking Ambrosine wasn't even escorted by her father. Jeanette's heart went out to her sister from another mother, who was left there to stand. But there wasn't anything she could do for her. Jeanette walked to the red carpet to the place that was rightfully hers. This marked the end of Chapter 2 of Lovely Princess, the best debutante. With time, Ambrosine learns to dance flawlessly. As she meets with Clyde and discusses the day's events as usual, Clyde randomly mentions how her birthday is coming up. Ambrosine halts eating. Her birthday is the same day as her mother's death. On her 7th birthday, Clyde asks her for the first time if she wants something, and she asks for the maids who used to give her chocolates. Ambrosine was an orphan in reality. Not even Felix and Lily got to be as festive as they wanted that day, so she has never really had a proper birthday before. So she got birthday presents from Clyde, and on her 9th birthday, she started kissing him on the cheek. It was when Clyde handed her the key to the treasury. She still remembers how his face looked. Ambrosine's journey in the novel began with her first encounter with Clyde when she was 9. Clyde asks her if she really wants something like before, but Ambersine shakes her head as she is now fully satisfied. Seeing him quiet, she remarks that she just likes being with him. He remains quiet and then asks her to finish her meal. Later, Felix asks her what she is thinking about her first dance at her upcoming debutante ball. Normally, aristocrats dance with their betrothed chosen by their family or a close, unmarried relative of the opposite sex, like a brother or cousin. She asks if she can just dance with Felix, making him choke on the air. He reveals he will be honored, but he cannot dare to, as she must have a more adequate dance partner. He suggests she give it some more thought. Later, Lucas calls her stupid, saying it's obvious her dad wants to dance the first dance with her at the ball. This makes Ambersine ponder. She later goes to her father and reminds him that her birthday and debutante are both coming soon. So she was thinking about who she would like to be escorted by for her first dance. So she suggests Felix and asks for her opinion. Clyde says Felix isn't a bad choice and tells her to do whatever she'd like. Ambersine reveals she asked Felix yesterday, and he said it will be okay if there's no one else to fit for the role. He says it's okay. Felix mentioned her debutante too and said this is a special day, so the escort must be chosen with care. So, Felix might be glad to hear that she chose him. Felix turns nervous as he sees the expression on Clyde's face. Ambersine later pleads with Lucas to practice dancing with him, as she might end up dancing with her father at her debutante. The problem is his height difference, and she wants Lucas to turn in his grown-up form so she can practice with him. Instead, he gives her a dummy to practice with. After becoming tired, Ambersine falls to the floor. She mentions how Aijkiel feels after graduating early from the Academy of Arlanta. It's been 6 years, and Ambersine wonders how much he's grown. Lucas suggests she just go see for herself, and he transports her there. As usual, he is a scumbag and makes her fall from the air once again. However, this time, Aijkiel catches her as if waiting for her. He remarks that she still surprises him every time they meet and confesses how he misses Lady Angel. She asks to be put down, and he obliges. As they hear Jeanette's voice, Aijkiel pardons in advance and leads Ambersine away. He leads her to his secret garden, revealing that this is where he comes when he wants to be alone. He then confesses how, up until that day 6 years ago, when he left for Arlanta, he went every day to the place where he met her for the first time. And after that, every 6 months, he returned to Obelia, even then and to this day. She asks why, since it was just a brief encounter, and he says he wonders why. And before he can say anything further, Lucas has Ambersine transported back home. She tells him off, but he interjects, saying he doesn't know why he feels this awful. He then vanishes, confusing Ambersine. Later, Ambersine thinks of how it makes sense that Aijkiel has feelings for her since she looks like her beautiful mother. At first, she thought she was just imagining things, but it's hard not to notice when he acts like that. She wonders if the story changed because Lucas sent her flying at Aijkiel 6 years ago, and if it's okay for the novel to be rewritten this way. Well, a super pretty girl fell on him from the sky, and she must be his first love. Still, Jeanette is the protagonist, so he must not be serious about her. She pushes her thoughts aside, deciding to think about this again after her debutante. Later, Ambersine expresses her worries to Clyde about messing up her debutante. Clyde assures her she can make mistakes, and if she does, it would be Felix's fault for not taking better care of her. She says someone might say some things about her. Clyde says that it should be the last thing they ever say. He tells her not to think too much, just dance outside for the sake of formality, and get out of there. Ambersine then reveals she was hoping to make her entrance holding his hand that day. She wants her first dance with him too, and she wants him to be the first to congratulate her on her debut as a 14-year-old. But she feigns sadness, asking if she doesn't really like those kinds of things. That is why she asked Felix, despite wanting to go with him. Clyde hums and says that if she wants it that badly, then there's nothing he can do. Ambersine hugs him immediately, expressing how happy she is. On the other hand, Felix cries in relief and thanks the princess for saving him. This makes her wonder just how much Clyde tortured him. It is soon the day of her 14th birthday. She gets gifts from maids, and Felix and Lily do their best to make her happy the whole day. After Lily tucks in for the night, Ambersine ponders over how she had high hopes this time. Clyde didn't come to her 14th birthday either. It feels strange every time. It's not that she is sad because Daddy didn't make it. It's just that it makes Clyde feel like a normal person. It's good for her survival, though, that Clyde has a human side to him. She gets interrupted by her thoughts as Lucas enters the room through the window. He has been coming to see her for the past 6 years. She suggests they go see Raven as her birthday gift, and he annoyingly agrees. She plays with Raven while Lucas watches, after which he forces her to go to bed. Finally, the day of the debutante ball arrived. Lily woke her up at the crack of dawn, and Ambrosine was surrounded by her maids, who helped her get ready for the big day ahead. Their worries made her realize she's been taking the debutante way too lightly. Ambrosine is soon done getting ready, and the maids are awestruck by her beauty. They also fixed the tiara on her, and Ambrosine couldn't help but think of how insanely pretty she looked. Lily wished her the best of luck, and she stepped out of the room. Even Felix is startled to see her and compliments her. He guides her out, where Ambrosine gasps as she sees Clyde all dressed up. Clyde looks at Ambrosine, and his eyes widen in surprise. He remarks that she looks like she will be cold, but Ambrosine isn't surprised by his reaction. He reaches out his hand, complimenting her, saying that she looks really pretty today. Ambrosine smiles and takes his hand, thanking him. Reaching the debutante ball, Ambrosine turns nervous as all eyes set on her and Clyde the moment they enter. She has never stood in front of this many people before. She sticks closer to Clyde, who takes note of the situation. He raises his head and glares at the onlookers below. One look brings chills to the crowds, and they respectfully bow their heads. He suggests making their heads down like that until the ceremony is over if that's what she wants. But Ambrosine refuses. He says he didn't take her as the type to get nervous about such trivial things, especially considering how she was ripping his hair out and hitting her face when she was little. He remarks that she was an insolent little thing even back then. She tells him to stop teasing her, but gladly, she feels a bit less tense. As they bow to initiate their first dance, Clyde asks her to relax, as it's a day for her to have fun no matter what anyone else says. Ambrosine tells him to get ready to be surprised, as she's great at dancing. However, she soon stomps on his feet and twists her ankle. Clyde grabs her and twirls her around, making the crowd gasp. Ambrosine asks if he is okay, to which he says he is in pain teasingly. He remarks that he forgot she was a different person, no matter how similar she looks. She continues stomping his feet till the dance ends. After the first debutante, the other girls also danced with their partners. After the dance, Ambrosine ponders whether Clyde has seen Aeschyle and Jeanette till now. Her eyes suddenly find a black-haired man standing with Sir Roger Alpheus. The second song soon ended, and the next dance was danced together by every girl making her debut that year. For a moment, that mysterious man's eyes looked like jewel eyes. Her attention diverts as Clyde encourages her to go ahead. At that moment, what she abruptly blurted out was a sincere thanks. She thanks him for being here with her today, vowing to remember today as a very happy day. These were Ambrosine's true feelings. Even if Clyde no longer sees her as his daughter because of Jeanette, he was the first father she ever had, and she has loved every moment of it. This is the only moment she can say this so truthfully. She then walks away, leaving Clyde astonished. From now on, Ambrosine will have to continue tricking everyone in order to survive. She walks to the dance floor, saying bye to her father. She asks to join the other ladies for permission, which they gladly accept. As they dance, a girl's voice tells Ambrosine that the ribbon on her waist is coming undone. The thought has crossed Ambrosine's mind a few times. Will I be able to recognize the grown-up Jeanette straight away even if no one tells me her name? Now she finally knows the answer. Dazed, she accidentally steps on Jeanette's foot. Ambrosine apologizes and Jeanette volunteers to tie her ribbon. But Ambrosine excuses herself, saying she has lost the dance tempo. As she walks away, she suddenly bumps into another boy. The boy greets her respectfully and says this is the first time he has had the opportunity to introduce himself officially like this. He introduces himself as Aeschyle Alpheus. He asks her for a dance, but Ambrosine is too distracted by her thoughts to dance right. She steps on Aeschyle's feet many times, making her embarrassed, but he assures her that her steps are as light as a feather. She had only practiced one song, thinking she would dance with Clyde only. Plus, dancing with him was awkward because of what he did the last time they met. It's her fault too for falling for him, but why did he have to look so princely and dreamy? Her thoughts are pushed away as Aeschyle randomly remarks that it seems His Majesty cares for his daughter deeply, as his back hurts more than the feet she stepped on. Ambrosine looks behind him to see Clyde shooting daggers with his eyes at Aeschyle. Ambrosine explains that her father is just curious since Sir Roger mentions him a lot, and she confesses how she too has been looking forward to meeting the famous son of the Alpheus family. Ambrosine observes how Aeschyle is acting like those times at the Duke's mansion never happened. It seems he already knew she was the princess. The song ends, and people cheer for them. Aeschyle plants a kiss on her hand and expresses how it was an honor to be able to spend this time with the princess on her special day. He looks forward to their next encounter, addressing her as Lady Angel. Ambrosine remains dumbfounded and frozen in one place as she realizes how he used to be so cute when he was little. Later, Clyde goes away to do some work, while Felix approaches Ambrosine and asks for a dance. Ambrosine agrees. After the dance, Felix turns pale and tells her to accept his apology if he did something to displease her in the past. She tells him that he knew what he was getting into since he saw her step on her dad's foot, shocking Felix. At least he wasn't the only one treated this way. Ambrosine notices Jeanette in the party hall, which means Clyde is on another business. Felix sees her stare in the direction of where the Alpheus family stood. Felix secretly reveals to Ambrosine how His Majesty ordered him a moment ago to guard her with extra care so that no other pests approach her. But he has no choice since it's her day, accepting to be scolded later. He promises to keep an eye on her and nudges her forward. And within a second, a huge crowd surrounds her, introducing themselves and asking her to dance. She was soon tired and found her father, asking if the ball was over yet. He asks why she wants to leave so soon when she has been looking forward to this debutante for too long. He asks if someone bothered her or said something to upset her.